Lesson 2.4 is going to be talking about percents that are greater than 100 and less than 1. So prior to this, we were dealing with percents that were either 1% all the way up to 100 and in that range. Now we're going to go above 100 and less than 1. So we're going to be on that same foldable. This is the last video, I promise, where we're going to be on page 37 and some of the pages to the right to do some examples. And there's a couple of things that we have to write down before we do those examples. So in your foldable, on the last part of that, on the bottom, we're actually going to add something to the center part. And so I want to open up that percent door and that little fraction door, okay, to start. So here is what you should have already from our notes before, going from percents to fractions. There's an additional thing we need to add for when we're dealing with percents that are greater than 100 and less than 1. So I'd like you to just put a little star. I'm just kind of write this way because I have more room. If the percent is greater than 100% or less than 1%. It is helpful to change it to a decimal first. Change the percent to a decimal first. And that is the bottom, very bottom little door where we're converting percents to decimals. You can look at that. So this is the back of that little fraction door where you have an example already, but that was the only one we did. 12%, we put it over 100, and then we simplified. When we have a very, very small percentage, less than 1%, you're going to see possibly, and this will be another example, a percentage that has 0.3 or 0.3%. It's not even 1 whole percent. It's very small. What might be better than doing the putting over 100 is to first convert it to a decimal. So that's what we're going to do, and let's remind ourselves by looking at those notes, we need to move the decimal point to the left. So I'm going to rewrite my decimal point, 0.3%. I'm going to change it to just a decimal without the percent sign by moving it 2 places, 1, 2, and now I have the decimals very small, 0 and 0.03. So part of our directions you're going to see tomorrow is the task is to rewrite this without the percent sign as a decimal and then as a fraction. So let's finish that part. We have our decimal piece, that's half of it. Now let's write it as a fraction. This 3 is sitting in the thousands place. So the 3 is the numerator and the 1,000 is the denominator. That is the decimal and fraction equivalent of this very, very small percentage. Let's go, that almost fell over there. Let's go to the other side of the foldable to do some more examples. So I'm actually going to be taking this percent door and actually coming over to this back of the door to do some examples. So here I am, ta-da! And now I'm going to do a percentage above 100%. So if I had the percentage 160%, and I need to write that as a decimal and in fraction form. Because this is over 100, I'm going to be having a mixed number at the end because it's more than 100%. So I could do this 2 ways. I could follow the instructions and I could put whatever this is over 100. So that would be 160 over 100. But then I have to simplify this, like our note said. So that is above 1 whole. That is an improper fraction. So that is equal to 1, and then 60 would be left over of the 100. If I pulled 100 out to make 100 over 100, that's 1. Then I have 60 left. I can simplify that more. And it's 1 6/10. That's the mixed number. I also need that decimal equivalent. 1 6/10. 1 6/10. So I have the decimal, and in this case, mixed number. Now, if I don't want to do this, and I want to convert this first to a decimal, I'm going to take 160%. I'm going to get rid of this by moving the decimal point over to the left twice. I have now my decimal 1.6, just like I did here. Then I need to write that as a mixed number, and I would get 1 6/10. So there's 2 different ways to do it. You can put it over 100 if it's above 100%, or you could convert it to a decimal first. So you have some strategies, 2 different ways to do this kind of problem. Let me do one more of those really small ones. Hopefully have a little bit of room. If not, you can always go to that extra page right to the right of the foldable where you've been doing all your other examples. I have a little more space. So, final example is going to be 0 and 25/100ths of a percent. So a 1/4 of a percent. I'm going to draw a line here. All right. So in this case, I don't want to put it over 100. That's going to be too complicated for me. I'm going to write this as a decimal. So I'm going to rewrite it and move this decimal point 2 places to the left. It's no longer here. I have to annex a 0. What is that decimal? It is 0 and 25/10,000ths. That's this place value. So when I write this as a fraction, because that's what I have to do as well, I'm going to put the 25 on the top, and then our denominator is the place value place. This is the 10,000ths place, and that's the denominator. This is not in simplest form. We can divide by 25, believe it or not. Works with 10,000. So we have 1 over 400 is our fraction equivalent. Here's our decimal equivalent for a teeny tiny 1/4 of 1%. Next, we're going to talk about going from decimals to percents when they are above 100% and less than 1% still. So we're going to be given a decimal and asked to find the percentage, and that percentage is going to be over 100 less than 1. So I'm going to be here. I'm actually going to be on this back of the decimal page doing some examples like this. So you might see the whole number 3.5. In order to get this into a percentage, we're going to move the decimal place 2 places to the right. So it's no longer in between the 3 and the 5. We now move it and annex a 0. And now we have a percentage above 100%, 350% is our answer. Now, what real life context would this be talking about? Well, one example would be money. Say I'm saving money and I have $100 that I've saved, and maybe I'm going to triple that investment or that amount that I'm saving. I increase my savings account by 300%. I have now just tripled it. So that is one instance or example of where you could see really large percentages when the profit of companies doubles or triples in dollar amounts. Another example is really small percentages is the stock market. Still that finance money kind of category. So this example is going to be, if we have the decimal 27/10,000ths, what is that as a percent? We're going to move our decimal point still 2 places to the right. So instead of this decimal, we're going to move it so that it is 0 and 27%. Now this, if you relate it to the stock market, people invest in companies and the company's profit can either increase or decrease. But unlike an increase of above 100%, it might only increase a little tiny little bit, not even 1%. So in the stock market, you might see it rise or fall just by a small percentage, meaning less than 1%. So that's a real world context for above 100 or less than 1%. The last kind of examples that I'm going to do, I don't have a spot in your foldable for them. So what I'm suggesting is any place that you have still, you can see my notebook, it's already filled up. I have this actual space to the right of this foldable. If you don't have that available, you can just go on to this page or even on the back. That's totally fine. But the last two examples that we're going to do deal with mixed numbers and changing those to percentages. So I might, if I'm on a blank piece of paper on the back, I might just put this as my title, mixed numbers to percentage, so I know what those kinds of examples are. And we're going to start with a mixed number. Let's start with 1 3/4. The direction is write as a percent. One strategy to solve this is to rewrite this as an improper fraction. So remember, going from the 4 to the 3, that backwards C, you're multiplying and then adding to get that new numerator. Denominators stay the same. Once I have 7/4, now I can do what I was used to doing, getting a denominator to be 10 or 100 or 1,000. And I can, by multiplying by 25, if I do that to the bottom, I have to do that to the top. So I have now 175 over 100. That's great because now this numerator is actually the percentage. So one strategy, improper fraction, and then do what you are used to doing, getting your denominator to be 10 or 100. You didn't want to do that. Another tip or strategy, I'm going to write it under here, is to take this and write it as a decimal. If you were thinking of 3/4 as 3/4 of a dollar, 75 cents, 3/4, you might already have memorized that 3/4 equals 75 hundredths. Once you have the decimal, all you have to do now is move the decimal point. So that would be 2 places to the right, and you can get your 175% that way. So improper fraction way or convert to a decimal, those are 2 ways you could change a mixed number to a percentage. Let's try one more. Final example, 3 3/10. We want to change this to a percentage. Let's do the improper fraction strategy first. Improper fraction, as the 10 is the denominator, 10 times 3, 30, plus 3, 33. Now that we have this, we have it as a 10. I'm going to do 100 and in the denominator by multiplying it by 10 over 10. I get 330 over 100. The numerator now becomes the percentage. Yay, we're done. Second way we could have done it, 3 3/10 is the decimal, 3.3, 3 3/10. Then we're going to move the decimal point over 2 places, ta-da, ta-da, and we have 330%. Okay? Tomorrow we're going to do all sorts of examples with this strategy of dealing with percents that are higher than 100 and percents that are less than 1. As a bonus to leave you with, if you feel like you can go above and beyond, we have a bonus. 2 examples, 280% and 45 hundredths of a percent. We are going to get this direction tomorrow, convert these percentages to a decimal and either a fraction if it's really small or a mixed number if it's really big. So there are actually 2 answers for this conversion and 2 answers for this conversion. You don't have to do these. This is an option, a bonus for if you want to practice more. So I'll see who went above and beyond tomorrow. Good luck, and I'll have you practicing more in class. Have a good night.